Thank you. Delighted to be here. I've just found out I'm actually the last speaker, right, of the event. I thought this was day one, so okay. I'm going to wrap this up within within the allotted time. I do promise you. I thought I would cover a bit of ground here that some of which you probably know something about. He said, speaking to the light. But some of it will, I hope, be new. I want to start with my theme here, sustainable development of Canada's people. I think to some extent the challenge that we have in when we talk about how to make the most of the people in the country and how to ensure that they get the most out of what they know and can do is that we haven't quite captured a memorable phrase for it or something that makes sense to everybody who hears it the first time round. It's a bit like I do some work on we have this roundtable called the Roundtable on the Socioeconomic Determinants of Health. And that is just not good advertising to see, that kind of a phrase. And similarly here, but maybe sustainable development of people is something that works. The point here is that we have said in many other areas, if we don't find a way to grow in a fashion that allows us to maintain our standard of living without overdoing it, we will not be successful in the long term. And that's true very much true with our people. Increasingly, that's a theme that we're constrained by that. If we don't have the people, we will be constrained. So sustainable development of our people is crucial. We are known as a resource nation, and in fact, our currency trades as a resource currency. It almost trades like what they call a petrocurrency. If you track the exchange rate of the Canadian dollar against the U.S. dollar, you'll find it, and look at the price of oil, they go hand in hand. They have been for about 15 years. So people think we're a resource country. They usually mean what's in the ground. I just published or produced a study on a substance called potash, which for the government of Saskatchewan recently, which figured in some newspapers and so on. And the worldwide attention on the resource in the ground is there. Everybody gets the idea that it's something valuable, and what's the issue is, what should a province do, what should the country do, what should the company do. The issue of people continues to be about our people is that this is a huge resource underused. Continues to be underused, notwithstanding our successes and our good efforts. And in fact, there's a whole litany of things there one has to do. Recognize, credential, use that to recruit, train people, reward innovation and entrepreneurship. We sorely lack that. And ultimately promote people on the basis of their capacity to contribute to performance. All that's what we have to do. It's really hard to get the message out to outside of the expert groups, outside of the people who already know a lot about it. I'm going to start out with the current condition of Canada, just to let you know a little bit. Conference Board, we do forecasting, and this is a little bit from my colleague, the chief economist, on where we are. We have done well compared to other countries in the recovery from the recession. Our future well-being in this recovery depends a good bit on the U.S. employment. The Bank of Canada has started to lift interest rates, and European debt issues are somewhat fading. There was a big trauma about European debt in Greece and in other countries. Spain, there was a worry for a while, and that's faded a bit. The loonie, our loonie, is keeping strong on the currency, on the petro piece, and we are seeing real GDP growth. So the good news is, we're actually experiencing GDP growth of 3% off a level that went down during the recession. So we're not yet back to where we were in 2008, but we're on the way back. Some softening next year as government spending cools. So and meanwhile, provinces are struggling with their fiscal situation. Just to let you know the condition you're in, the provinces are under more difficult financial conditions than the federal government when it comes to tax revenue versus expenditure. Just a little look at the country. There's GDP growth. The dark figures are actual, and you see we had the big decline. These are our forecast numbers for 10, 11, and 12, so you see quite reasonably strong recovery, but not the kind of recovery levels you get in previous recovery periods. Economists would call this a weak recovery. And if you translate that into jobs, This is the net, what happened in Canada. 272,000 jobs lost. In fact, that turned out to be a combination of a certain number of jobs created and a larger number lost. And there's the net number for you. Again, we're seeing employment growth in this year and the next couple of years. And of course, as employment grows back, you're going to see an issue for the population, for employers. Here is the unemployment rate, the actual unemployment rate versus what we call the natural rate. And that means over an extended period. The natural rate has dipped. That's the level at which the economists say if you go below that level, you get trouble replacing people into jobs, and you get wage pressure upwards as a result of that. So you kind of destabilize the labor market because there's really more jobs than there are qualified people when you get below a certain level. So what you see there is the unemployment rate spiked up substantially, very substantially during the recession, but it certainly hasn't gone back to anything near the levels it actually was in the 90s, even during this serious recession. And I think that's important to realize. There's a cycle in the business world, but structurally we're under pressure around people, and that's a big message for government, that in the long term, that's going to put pressure on our capacity. So those are numbers that lie behind this notion that learning matters economically, and I think you know this, and so I'm not going to belabor it, but the demography is strongly affecting us and most other developed countries. I've got a slide or two on that. There is a competition for talent. There are teams coming to Canada seeking people to take home, as they would call it, from China and India, for example, looking for talent to bring home. And I was talking, for example, to the head of a large company, Canadian company, Home Depot, who also runs the Chinese operation. And it's very interesting. People who emigrated from China to Canada, got nice jobs here, have gone home, now want Home Depot to redecorate their places in China to be like Canadian homes. So this is very interesting. This is the world is, in other words, becoming, it's a bit like global supply chains. It's becoming interconnected in a way it never was before. So we have to keep this in mind as we talk about what we're doing. So yeah, that's an aging labor force. The labor force growth is going to slow drastically. I'm going to show you some numbers for some provinces. In some areas, we've already reached the point where there's an excess demand. There's a demand larger than the supply. And that's not surprising when you look at the world numbers. You see this steady aging in the population. This is people 65 and over. And if you look at Canada, we're better than Western Europe, better than Japan, but we're worse than the United States, largely because the U.S. has a Hispanic population. That's really where they get the help. China is getting older because of their one-child policy. Here's some more detailed numbers in the deck, and that'll be available to you. But what it shows you is Canada, and it continues to get old, but it's not actually getting older than the rest of the developed world. It's the so-called developing world, which is younger. Some countries really striking. If you look at Greece, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Italy over there, moving out, they get to average age, median age, not mean, but median age, over 50, over 52. And compare that back to 1980 when the median age in some countries was under 30. So this is changing who's working, and I'll come to that, and this has implications for prior learning, assessment, recognition, credentialing. All of this is being affected by this. Here's Canada, retirement. You see here the lowest age there when they were still selling Freedom 55 along with the Nortel shares around 1998. I bought those shares, by the way, but still have them too. I won't go any further on that one. But you see the upturn there, what we got to was a point in effect where the private sector people the public sector people have been retiring on the packages, and now there's a push to keep people longer, and there's less sweetening of the packages, less attraction. You saw in France they had one of their famous strikes over the raising of the age of retirement to 62. There's going to be more of that. There is going to be more of that. There's going to be, it may be that the people in government, working for government, will get, quote, grandfathered on what they have now. But when people coming into the system are not going to have the same deals. Demography will change that. It's not an affordable system, and that's going to change the pattern of who works and how long people want to work or feel they need to work. And we saw a bit of uptick in the recession, by the way, on that, as people no longer feel the wealth effect of their homes getting to be worth more and more. You know that thing where there was a period there for a while, and every other show on television was about buying and flipping homes, right? But you can only flip so many things. At some point, you run out of flippies, if that's the right word for it. And that's happened. Down in the States, of course, you can buy remarkable houses in some parts of the country where there's 25% default on mortgages. So that's changing the world we're in, and that housing issue is still with us. So many areas share the labor supply problem, and the gap in supply and demand is not sustainable over the long term, not if you want to keep your economy going. And that's the problem. You know, in the theory of economics, you substitute capital for labor if you run out of labor, but you can only do that so far, and the labor you have has to be able to use what you do with the capital. So if the capital means you intensify the complexity of your work production, you need to be able to have people with skills to do that. So you can't just substitute forever. Here's some shortages that Conference Board has come up with in a number of studies we've done for provinces in the last few years. And you can certainly say, well, because of the recession, the moment, the incident point there when it moves into shortfall altered a bit. But that's only a change in the cycle. The structural issue of hundreds of thousands of labor shortage in Ontario moving forward is still there. And if you do not have these people, if you cannot find these people, you constrain growth in the economy. That's Ontario. Here to show you some more of the pattern, this British Columbia shortage going out to 2015. We did this work looking at that, and we were seeing a shortage rising to 180,000. Our numbers were very conservative. Some of the government numbers at the time were even higher, but we went through a very sophisticated modeling exercise to do this. The numbers could be higher, but they were definitely these numbers or more. And similarly, if you look at Quebec, you see we've expressed it, we've flipped it, but it's the same idea. The potential labor shortage, thousands of jobs, and the number there goes up to close to 400,000 by 2030. In each case, the projection of shortages, all built into this projection is an increase in immigration to Canada beyond the level we currently have. If we don't attract the immigrants, we will have an even bigger shortfall in this matter. And this is a way of showing the implied and natural unemployment for Quebec. You can look at that at your leisure when you look at the deck. All of that means the pressure is on. I mean, you could do the same for other provinces. We've done these numbers, and I can tell you that to change this is a big challenge. And getting the most out of people, I'm showing you this because finding a way for governments to make the most of the people, what they know and can do, to utilize them to make sure they're employed and fully employed is one major strategy. It's not the only thing, but it's a big piece, and they need to do it. So here you have access. Here's another piece, the access to labor. The ratio of retired to working population is lowering. In other words, it used to be 40 years ago something like you'd have 5 people working for every one retired. Today the ratio is 3 or less, and in a generation it's going to be down to under 2. That means you need a huge amount of productivity out of the people you employ to be able to support those people who are retired. Again, you need to know what their skills are. You need to build up their skills and recognize them and credential them and use them. So that's making the most of people. That's that sustainable development of people. Okay, and the young people, although there's a baby boom echo and all that, and there's certainly a lot of kids coming into the labor force, not enough to replace the retirees. So the big strategies, people talk about increasing the expertise. That is building up people, keeping people longer in programs in university and college, in training, getting them through apprenticeships, building up expertise. Attracting international and interprovincial, attracting lots more international people, and facilitating interprovincial migration, getting people to where the jobs are, and then increasing the supply by making use of the underrepresented. All of these strategies require more PLAR. It means training people, attracting those immigrants, transferring them, engaging the underrepresented populations. Every one of those requires and will benefit from prior learning assessment. Some way of taking them and saying, not only do you have a credential maybe, you've got a learning, you have a work experience, it may be international, it may be Canadian, but we need it. So we've done some work in the past on recognition and what that means to productivity and innovation. We did work on BrainGate study I did with Michael Grant on this, and since recently Toronto has come up with some numbers. And so Jeff Wright says other people have done this. When you look at the numbers, you find it continually there is this gap. People are earning less, and they're being inadequately employed in our economy. That all pushes that gap between the skilled and those in the number of people in the labor force with skill and or the use of skill in the workplace and what we need. So there are ways to do something about this, of course, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about what you can do. So employers can help themselves in part. The government role is, of course, enormous, but employers can partly address the issue without waiting for everybody else. And I'm encouraging some of that, and I hope that we'll see more employers doing this around both recognizing learning, and in learning I mean knowledge and skills, but also attitudes and behaviors, the state of people achieve as they learn, as well as the credentials from education, from training, and from other kinds of workplace learning that takes place in the work. Formal documents, you know what these are. There's a wide range and getting wider. So I think the acceptance of a broader range of documents, I'm on an advisory group for the Public Service Commission, and we were just talking about different ways to recognize leadership in the executive ranks in the public service, and people are broadening out their thinking about how that is going to work. You know, there is more appetite for different forms of learning record than there has been before. That appetite is growing and it's becoming more meaningful. So I want to talk a little bit about two target populations. Here's a list that we use because of the numbers: immigrants, mature workers, women, people with disabilities, Aboriginal peoples, and at-risk youth. The actual numbers are not in this order. It would be, if I was putting in sheer numbers, women are the majority. Women, and then I would go women, immigrants, mature workers, people with disabilities, but even Aboriginal at-risk youth in terms of numbers of folk. But I had to pick a couple of things to talk about, so I thought I'd pick immigrants and mature workers, say a bit about what's going on. And interesting, we are now back to a diversity level we had around just before World War II, around the 1930s. And we're projecting that this is not a big projection. It's pretty obvious where the numbers are going. The visible minority population is about a fifth, and that will continue to rise beyond that. Of course, that's based on our projection, and this is quite a striking point. I've used this slide because I'm trying to emphasize this everywhere. The numbers you see kind of flipping up and down are the real numbers. The kind of steady slope up is the projection. And that's the projection we need not to constrain growth in the economy. You need to have that kind of level, which is higher than in the past, in other words, you have to go up to 1% in order to support the economic growth at the level that makes the markets and our economic system feel comfortable. If you get down too low, if you get down to 2% growth annually, people get very nervous. And the operators of companies get nervous, governments get nervous, the government of the Bank of Canada gets nervous, everyone gets nervous. So that's what you need. And the immigration facts, in other words, we're saying to go up to 360,000. And that would be leading to 100% of net growth in the workforce from immigration. So that's where we have to go to make the models work. And that's important for our policymakers to know this. I've said before here that the big change is European immigration down, Asian immigration up, and those are the step functions. And now a recent study here from 2008 showing who's here, And you have, in order, the numbers from the visible minority labor force. It's Chinese, South Asian, Black, Filipino, Latin American, Southeast Asian, Arab, West Asian. You can see the larger populations there in the minority population. Chinese and South Asian are the two largest groups, about half. But quite a range here of diversity in the population. So, we have underemployment as a priority issue. Underemployment is not being solved. And in fact, we are seeing now, all the studies are showing people are not recovering, or not reaching their income level they should, given the education they have. And when you test for, use certain research techniques to test to make sure their reporting education matches what they have, it does match up well, and they're not catching up. So what to do about it? Well, I want to give you a few examples from the employer world. Here, that's interesting. Here's St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, creating access to regulated employment care. And they offer a Canadian certification. One of the challenges, as you well know, most of you know, is getting that Canadian certification. And here's a way that's offering a combination of courses and bursaries, because money matters, and to help internationally trained nurses get their license in Ontario. And this is obviously St. Michael's is a major hospital. So there's an institution saying, we can actually help the people who are with us to get the certification, then they'll work for us. And that will help us meet our need for skilled people. Here's another one. Deloitte, which is one of the world's big chartered accounting firms. It's actually worldwide, maybe the largest now. Has worldwide hundreds of thousands of people work for Deloitte. And it's recognizing that immigrants who want to be recertified in Canada as chartered accountants need to be able to get into the system. They are well connected. Deloitte operates all over the world, but they are actually doing things to help their folk actually get that certification, because they recognize they need that talent. And so this is a high-end professional services organization making the effort on this. So there's another kind of organization. Here's one that we're involved in. So I'll promote it slightly. With Ryerson University, and funded by the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration, Ontario. Thank you. And we call it Signpost, and it's a talent management piece. It's designed to help people. It's an online-based, and it's going to help internationally educated professionals, IEPs, in accounting and financial services who are here or planning to come into the country, get into good jobs, and in other words, get into the kind of jobs they should get into. And we want to improve the way in which from the employer side and their side, the recruitment experience, properly being selected, getting appropriately mentored and integrated, professionally developed in this financial services sector. It's for everybody. It's not just for in this case, an immigrant. It would be the immigrant serving agencies, the people trying to help that group coming in, and the employers who need it. And we're doing creating talent profiles. It's rather an interesting piece where we're going to build on some of our employability skills work and the technical knowledge and skills that they have. And I think we've got essentially we got a combination of competency assessment and talent management. The two things go together. It's about certainly being able to demonstrate what you know and can do, and your competency in this area is competency, the word that they care about. But also, how do you manage yourself? How do you actually take yourself forward in your career? And this stuff is starting out. So we have a couple of little visuals on this about the careers in accounting, banking, insurance, investments, wealth management. I was giving his presentation yesterday in somewhere, and the guy beside me, who's an American, he said his background was in ultra high wealth management. So nobody in the room understood what that meant. So all government people going ultra high. He said that was, I think, if you had over 10 million, we're not working with that group here with this, but this is the idea of it. So you have a person's profile and a very easy to use easy to reference kind of structure around what an individual has and what kind of skills they have in tracking. So this is the words in here aren't words of that kind of a, Lord Ipsum, printer's Greek as they used to call it. But that's the idea. So we have this, and it's going to be available online for people, and they can take it with them. They can move around and let people look at it, and it'll be part of being able to demonstrate easily competency involving the university, involving us, involving them in a way that will be credible. And so I put that in to show you a little, I'll give you a flavor of that. Another group I want to spend a few minutes on. You remember my numbers about retirement. There's a big, I think, an increasing need to understand how to recognize the learning, knowledge, skills of the mature workforce. You might say, well, hey, they've been working, what's the problem? But often people actually know things that they aren't credentialed in their work. They may have acquired an expertise that is transferable, and it's hard other than to say, I had this job, to be able to show people. And if you want to say move out of your industry into another industry, you need something more than saying, I had this job over here. People won't get it. Maybe they should, but they don't. So we have to figure out ways of combination of reskilling, which is often helping people reframe what they know and can do for a new context, and showing what the essential knowledge and skills are that they have. And as you know, it used to be that people, the famous story you saw that somebody was upset in the Globe and Mail the other day with the old von Bismarck story. When they issued the retirement in Germany in the 1870s, they set it at 65 for men was the kick-in age for the pension, after Chancellor von Bismarck got the report from his officials that the average age at which German men died was 61.7. Which meant actuarially that was a good thing. And then somebody said, well, really that's factoring in high childhood death rates before age 5, and really they live to be 66 or something. But the point was, there is not much cost there on the pension side, and there wasn't much demand for people that age because so much of the work was really physical. Today our jobs are much more knowledge jobs, much less physical, and we have a demand for people, and they're living healthy longer. So this is why mature workers, the case is there. You might think it's self-evident, but it's not everywhere is it being accepted. And we are looking at what people are doing with mature workers around learning and development. This is a conference board study. Investment in training and learning is going down. At least the formal stuff is going down in real terms. 40% less than it was in the early 90s in real dollars. A rise in informal learning. A serious rise in that. Here's what's going on here. If you look at people over 50 and under 50, and what you find is that people over 50 at full-time, part-time, and contract get less training. And it comes down to, at least in part, the fact that the employers think they're going to get less time to recover their investment. Part, I think, is also people over 50 are less inclined to sign up because they think they're not going to get the opportunity to use what they invest their time in. But the point is there's a gap in here, and you say, I want to emphasize this, that when I say the numbers are down 40%, that's on the formal side. There's always been a mix of formal and informal. We have seen a rise in the recording of informal. That may partly be because people are more aware of informal learning than they used to be. It's hard to be certain about what it means, but even if you allow for quite a substantial bit of awareness around informal, there's still been a movement up. And here's the pattern, 04, 06, 08. You can see a steady movement up. That's too much of an increase to be fully real. Part of this is awareness, but there's still a movement. I'm going to skip over these for the interest of time. I think you know what informal learning is. So strategies for the aging workforce. Eliminate ageism. Okay, well that's kind of a simple statement to make, a lot easier to say than to do. I know that. It's easier to give a recipe. But basically, ageism would, in a sense, would be saying, oh, I inherently think that people over a certain age aren't going to be able to, or won't want to contribute for too long in my workplace, so I'm not going to bother. That's the ageism piece. And then there has to be some sense that you're going to actually create an age-friendly workplace, including processes for work. And that's partly around flexibility in the work, partly around the roles people take on. And one of the big things, we've got a report coming out on knowledge transfer that's coming out soon, and that's one of the things that people can do. Instead of just retiring, the last couple of years they can be transferring what their knowledge and their know-how to the next group. It's hard to set that up in workplaces because people are, it's hard to cover the cost of that, but we have to go there. So aging workforce strategies have to be there. I'd say provide career training. If you said to somebody, you could have a track of people say, at age 50, if you're healthy, do you want to work to 70? If you do, you want to work 20 more years. Some people like to work longer, and some people don't. But not everyone is going to. I've been told that not everybody actually wants to work permanently, but there are some people who want to. I say, let's give people an option. Let's give them an option, and let's create some career paths for people, including learning recognition up to the age of 70. I was inspired by the guy on the TV last night who's 107, he's graduated from high school when he was like 96. He's interviewed, sitting there sipping cocoa, I was thinking of going to college now. I would say he's an optimist, but God bless him, right? This man was like, he started high school 20 years after that retirement age. So I think we can do more, and I think we can do more to certify those people, and we can encourage employers to use learning records for people of all ages. I've got a couple of examples. It's my last bit from the U.S. from the healthcare sector, because I wanted to show you something a bit different, but. This sector is highly reliant on mature workers. Not the only sector. I mean, in Canada, there are parts of the tourism and hospitality sector very dependent on mature workers. But I'm just I had to pick something, and this is an interesting one, I thought. They're using a range of programs to train, reskill, certify, and accredit, and transfer knowledge among this group of nurses in healthcare. And they're doing it because they found that mature workers have experience that actually influences patient outcomes. There's the ultimate. Actually influences the patient outcomes. It affects the result in that workplace and supports productivity gain. And here's an example of a very famous hospital, Massachusetts General, which is one of the great American hospitals, has created this leadership academy to retain older experienced employees and offer older employees a pathway into management. This is that idea that, you're not finished if you didn't get the bump up at age, whatever it may be. And you can take courses to develop management skills in these areas with people, processes, financial communication management. This gives you people who've often been there, they know everybody, they know how the place works, they have all this institutional knowledge as well as personal skill, and now an opportunity as a mature person to get into management. And it's result higher retention rates amongst its older employee segment as it transitions them into these jobs. So the strategy is meeting with a response. They train them, give them recognition in the workplace that they have the skill, their management, not only management material, their management, and they perform. Here's one from Scripps in San Diego. I intend to set up an office in San Diego as soon as possible. I spoke down there recently, and I'm still getting over that. Very nice place. Scripps Health. Again, this idea, Scripps Center for Learning, comprehensive training for the people. They offer them online and in-house training. They certify people, their certification courses, and they have a tuition reimbursement, a whole host of things designed to take those people, give them what they need, and get them, there's a risk if you go into anything unless you get some support. So all this tuition reimbursement, et cetera, is designed to mitigate risk, make people feel like they want to take the plunge. And a final one here from Omaha, Right at Home. Home healthcare provider, hundreds of offices, thousands of clients, and they want, reliable, empathetic, dedicated people. So they want mature workers. And the thing here is, why I'm bringing these out, it's not because mature workers are the only people, it's because if you take a at-risk population, so-called, and you target it, you think it through, you can design programs that are going to reach the people in a specific way that will draw them into work. And I think employers could support this. I don't think they're going to do it all on their own. Governments could take these ideas and put them out there through their programs, and maybe with some help from colleges, they could get the thing started, and you're going a long way towards dealing with some of the shortage. And so this case right at home, I'll give you some more details about it there. So to wrap this up, I think the case is that very clear, the numbers are very clear. The sustainable development of this country in economic terms and for our people is dependent on making the most of the capacity. There's no doubt about that. We are doing a pretty good job on recognition, I think better than we were when I first started looking at learning recognition in the 90s. We are certainly doing better than that. But it means doing more of it and much more. And in effect, I think the next stage is this notion that to sell it to the powers that be, to sell it to the leadership in government, and to sell it to the leadership in business, getting that idea across, that there is no sustainable development in this country without developing the people. And that this is learning recognition in all of its forms is actually a central part of developing people. Without it, we're going to have that bigger gap. If we do this right, we're going to start to close that and actually generate the level of capacity in this economy, in our society we actually want. The spillover effects are huge for social benefit and for personal satisfaction, but the story then is that learning recognition and in all of its forms is not a marginal activity. The message, I think, for leadership in government, certainly, and in business, wherever I'm taking this out to business leaders as well, is you can actually solve part of your problem, and you will get things like a higher tax base, you will get less demand for services, you will get a net benefit that is higher than you ever imagined. So I'll close there, but say I salute you for what you're doing in this area. I'm going to try and take the message outside of the normal channels about how significant this is. But if you're pitching it to people in outside of the expert community, and you bring that idea about how big you are, how important you are to sustainable development, I think you're going to find that there's an even larger uptake in the future. Thank you very much.